Welcome to the Shyamcast. My name is Brett,
My name is Shyam.
and thanks for being here with us. So, Shyam, we are getting into chapter one is the real Bhagavad Gita, but I'm going to call it the real Bhagavad Gita it's the actual speaking of Krishna, so it's the actual song of the divine. So, yeah, we're going to get into chapter
Mhm,
two today. Just small recap
mhm,
of what we talked about last time. Arjuna does not want to fight against his family. He gives four
mhm,
main reasons why he doesn't want to do
mhm,
so. He's afraid of bad reactions, bad
mhm,
karma that would result from
mhm,
it. I guess maybe most
mhm,
importantly, he feels compassion towards all of these people in his family. He does not want to harm them. He, is sort of
mhm,
scared for their welfare. He does not want
mhm,
these family members to fight. He certainly doesn't want to be involved in it. He doesn't want to enjoy the kingdom without them as well. So
mhm,
he says
mhm,
kind of, what's the point of having this kingdom if my family's gone? And then his family being gone is the
mhm,
last point. He doesn't want this great dynasty that has been, built and,
mhm,
over a long period of time by many people. He feels like it's just going to crumble before his eyes, at the end of this battle. So those are his four reasons that he gives. Um, and now, as we get into chapter two, we've already talked about some of the points, like the rebuttals that Krishna gives to Arjuna. Um, but I
mhm,
was wondering if we could start really just one thing that comes up at different points in the Bhagavad Gita, and it really helps to have the Sanskrit translation for this. You kind of need the Sanskrit translation for this, I
mhm,
suppose. If you only have an English translation, you
mhm,
probably don't catch it. But um, Krishna is referred to by many different names in Bhagavad Gita, and
mhm,
it said, God has millions, billion, like unlimited names, unlimited things that you could call him. Krishna is one of them.
mhm,
Krishna means all attractive, the all attractive one.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
and there are many, many others that are used, commonly. And there's many different names that are used in the Bhagavad Gita. So, for example, in the first verse of the second chapter, uh, it states, seeing Arjuna full of compassion, his mind depressed, his eyes full of tears, Madhusudana, Krishna, spoke the following words. So he's referred to
mhm,
as Madhusudana. Could
mhm,
you, I guess, tell us what Madhusudana means?
mhm. It is very interesting that this is spoken by Sanjay,
Mm-hmm.
and he is calling Krishna by the name Madhusudana. And while Krishna was here on this planet Earth 5,000 years ago, he killed a demon by the name Madhu. And Sudan means to annihilate or to kill. So he's called Madhusudana because he killed that demon, Madhu. And here Madhu represents doubts.
Mm.
So this is very interesting. Sanjaya is telling Dhritarashtra, Krishna is going to kill the doubts of Arjuna. Bhagavad Gita has not yet spoken, and Krishna is not also, and it's not Arjuna speaking, it's Sanjaya speaking, and he's saying that. This is
Mm.
interesting.
Yeah, no, thank you.
So he's giving a hint. This is again, we were discussing science. So this is like Dhritarashtra may be very happy, or this is so nice. Arjuna is not going to fight, means kingdom is ours and everything is good. So he may be encouraged. But then Sanjay uses this word to indicate what is going to happen.
Mm. I like in this verse too, just to that point, he described just the way Sanjaya describes it, seeing Arjuna full of compassion, his mind is depressed, his eyes are full of tears. So it's like you really you're sort of there with Arjuna, you can really feel what he's feeling. You see through that description some of the pain that he's going through. And then, with this um, calling Krishna by Madhusudana, it's again, like you say, he's letting us in on the fact that he's about to dispel all of these doubts. He's, he's the one who can take all of that away. He's the one who can really
mm,
resolve all of um the suffering that we feel, you know,
mm,
in
mm,
especially in this particular case, including all the doubts that we feel. So, um, yeah, that's how the second
mm.
chapter starts.
No
And
matter uh,
yeah,
how difficult the situation we are in, or how complex the situation, or how impossible the situation seems, taking shelter of Krishna can resolve everything, as you pointed out.
and that is what Arjuna does. I think we mentioned this last time. He says, Krishna, basically I'm like I'm accepting you as my spiritual master. I'm
Mm,
I'm giving up the you tell me what to do. This comes early in the second chapter. Now I'm a disciple, a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. And he still says, I won't fight. He's still in this right after um right after he says that he is surrendered to Krishna. He still says, I can't fight. I won't fight, and kind of hangs his head
mm,
and makes room for
mm.
Krishna, to speak. So he's still kind of in this
That's
attitude.
like the difference between being intellectual and being um, attached. So, like we were discussing, he knows that if I surrender, everything will be perfect. But then he's unable to. So that's why it's like, like he's coming back to his inner feeling. Oh, Krishna, I can't do this. Then Krishna, I surrender. Whatever you say, I will do. But Krishna, this I can't do.
Yeah, he
That's
has the
that
doubt still.
emotions we also go.
Ooh. Oh, sorry to interrupt
Ye-
you, Prabhuji.
Yes. Yeah. He knows what is right, but he doesn't have doubt like what he should be doing. But he just doesn't want to do it. And in third chapter, we will see he tells Krishna, Krishna, I know what is right. What is the force that is stopping me to do, even though I know what is right? And then he again poses questions that seems like he has doubts. But really, those questions are coming because he wants to avoid his duty.
It's like what you mentioned in our last episode. Krishna says that this is a weakness of heart, and
Mm,
you described that as like, well, weakness of heart is sort of when you don't do what you know you should do,
mm,
basically,
mm,
and
mm.
that has to do with being attached.
Being attached. Perfect.
Mm. And so I did I was also thinking about that. I know at least personally, I don't want to fall into the trap of comparing myself to somebody like Arjuna. I think if I'm not a warrior anyway, but if I was, if I were, um, he's faced with this very difficult, I mean, like an extremely difficult situation. It's sort of, it is an extreme, I mean, he's faced with having to fight his whole family in a battle. Um, and so, in our own lives, that situation is going to be a quite a different thing, I suppose. But, the through line is really, not having an attachment that's going to stop you from doing the thing that needs to be done. Like we really discussed last time, this fighting in this battle is just the thing that really needs to be done, you know, in Arjuna's
Mm,
case. And so we all have things
mm,
like that in our lives. We
mm.
have, whether it's maybe something that's difficult or something that we don't want to do. Um, but we all have our own responsibilities, our own things we have to do. And so if we're sort of
I mean,
attached to not doing that thing, that's when trouble can happen.
so, as you mentioned, extremely difficult situation Arjuna was in. I mean, imagine if you really love somebody and they are in front of you and you have to shoot at them.
Ooh, yeah, yeah.
And they are the people whom you love the most, who are worshipable, family relatives or who are worshipable, and um, anybody will be like devastated.
Mm, yeah. I think it's hard,
And that
obviously it's a different culture. as well. It's a different place and time. It's like the Vedic civilization, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's yeah, I guess you could say, I mean, it's like it's a different rule. It's just it's sort of a different thing from what we live in. So I think that's important just to understand as well. It's not like, um, in our modern day Western life, this is sort of an unimaginable scenario, I suppose. But, it's like I think we have to try to separate ourselves from that and try, like try to place the mind 5,000 years ago, in India, yeah, as in the Kuru dynasty, where where things are different, where life is different, life is
But at
structured
the same
differently,
time, it's
wars are, or yeah, go ahead.
even there was more love than today. The love that Arjuna has for Bhishma, for Drona was so pure, and so much respect and so much gratitude and such affection. It was even harder because this is a previous, which was a better yoga.
Um,
And in that situation, anybody will be bewildered.
so it's even more difficult than to imagine what it was like.
It's devastating for Arjuna to stand there and seeing them like, Krishna, how can I do this? But that also shows Krishna's clarity of decision and the purpose. He's not driven by, Krishna is not driven by um, attachments. It's very difficult to understand Krishna's role, but through Krishna's teachings, it will become clear. That's why many people cites Arjuna because they can relate with Arjuna more than Krishna. But this chapter will clarify. And the previous chapter we did clarify how all the four reasons were, what were Krishna's uh, knowledge about those four reasons. That you fought so many battles in the past, then um, why reasons are coming now? Why not in previous battles? So it was clear that yeah, it's because they are mine. But then there is a distinction at the level of body. They are mine and they are not mine.
Mm,
Because if you see from the perspective of soul, then everybody is a same position, part and parcel of divine.
mm. And so
And then
that's
there is
that's
a
about
orderly attachment.
oh yeah, sorry, Proji. I think we're just having a little like internet. There's a slight internet lag. I think that I'm getting. So just so you know, your video is like just it's kind of coming in and out a little bit at times.
Oh,
But yeah, not too bad though. We can keep going. Um, so I was just thinking we're like right about to get to this point where he really starts teaching Arjuna, and right before that, um, Arjuna has just basically said, I'm not going to fight, and then this, another name for Krishna is used where it says, at that time Krishna, smiling in the midst of both armies, spoke the following words to the grief-stricken Arjuna. So in this verse, he's referred to as Hrishikesha.
mm,
And I guess generally I can say, Hrishikesh means master of senses, also
mm,
refers to one who's
mm,
all knowing.
mm,
So there's, some significance in the fact that it mentions he is smiling in this
mm,
verse.
mm,
When one who knows everything is very compassionate, he's going to drive away all
mm,
of the doubt that we feel, like with, Madhusudana. And, he's also the one who knows everything. And, it's sort of like it gives one comfort to know that he would be smiling, despite this does not appear to be a situation that is happy or funny or, like would warrant a smile, but it's a knowing smile. It's a very wise smile that
mm,
he gives as he's about to, instruct Arjuna.
mm. I was also thinking when this is again spoken by Sanjaya, and Krishna refers to senses as Krishna says, a living entity struggling with six senses that includes the mind. So there are five senses and the mind. And when Sanjay is referring to Rishikesh, Sanjay is pointing that although he is very disturbed, his mind is very disturbed, very soon Krishna will direct his mind and senses in the right direction. That's another those indications to Dhritarashtra.
It is interesting, isn't it, that, Dhritarashtra is not um he's not very friendly towards Krishna, I suppose. He
Mm,
and like his side of this family is a little bit inimical towards Krishna.
mm,
And Sanjay is his secretary, but Sanjay is also a devotee of Krishna.
mm. There is
Eh,
one, yeah, go ahead.
no, yeah, go ahead. That was it, Prabhuji.
I mean, one thing is, um, you mentioned Dhritarashtra is inimical to Krishna
Hmm.
or not very favorable to Krishna, and that is correct. And the reason behind that is also attachment. When we are really attached to something and um, somebody says something that is not in line with what I really want, how I really want things to proceed, they're not my friend anymore.
Hmm. And so Krishna tells, I mean, Krishna is in favor of Dhritarashtra giving the kingdom back to the Pandavas,
Hmm.
right? And so yeah, he's when you are told that you should give up being king, to the rightful heir, even though it is to the rightful heir, you know, it's not something that he wants to hear.
Krishna gave a fair chance. Why don't you guys divide? Although you don't deserve it, Yudhishthir deserved it, Arjuna deserved it because they are elder. But okay, you give them a fair chance. He said, all right, you take everything, give them a small portion. But they are not willing to budge an inch. That's and then they are not Krishna is their enemy. That's because they want everything. All right.
Mm. Yeah. And I think it's just, to bring up Sanjay, briefly, I guess, sort of realize what I was thinking there. Um, in a material sense or in a worldly sense, he is the subordinate to Dhritarashtra. He's his secretary. But it's
Mm,
mentioned in the commentary that he's the spiritual superior to
mm,
Dhritarashtra.
mm,
And so, despite the fact that he's in a subordinate position, he's still, I guess, very cleverly,
mm,
speaking about Krishna and this story with Arjuna in a way that's very reverential. That's, he's referring to him as Madhusudana, as Rishikesh. He's giving these, like you said, these tiny omens or these indications of what's going to come, which is ultimately not going to be good news for Dhritarashtra because, his side is not going to win this battle. And he's also trying to teach him. It's like he's kind of trying to, as he's explaining the lesson that Krishna teaches, he's sort of spreading that lesson to Dhritarashtra as well, to anybody really who's listening.
mm. But one very nice point, as you mentioned, Dhritarashtra is not able to understand those signs though.
Mm.
There are many signs Sanjay is pointing out. See, Arjuna will be overcome. Arjuna will fight, but by Madhusudana, by Rishikesha. But Dhritarashtra cannot get it. So it is said that it is said that when we are attached, we cannot learn the lessons that the nature teaches us. When we are attached, we cannot learn the lessons that the nature teaches us.
I'm curious. It seems like, I mean, we had an episode on attachment earlier. It's
Mm,
a big topic that you can talk
mm,
about, I think, a
mm,
lot. But if I guess attachment is really, it's a thing that keeps us from doing the thing that we know we should do, I suppose, like we were just mentioning. I'm curious, you know how do we know what those things are? Like how do we know what our duty is in life, what our responsibility is in life? I don't I don't know if it's something that many of us, including me, have put a lot of thought into actually. Um, but it's sort of and I mean like beyond the normal things where it's I have to go to work and eat food and I do the basic things to survive. What is our what is our duty in life? What really is that?
Mm.
How do we find that? Because
It
it's
is very
sort of
complex. There are two ways to find it. One way is you ask a learned person who is observing you for some time. That is one way. Another way is you practice the qualities Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita, like truthfulness, patience, tolerance, compassion. And it is said that when we gradually practice, our own nature becomes revealed to us. When we live a life of like sattvic life, goodness, trying to practice our good qualities, then we'll start understanding ourselves more. It is mentioned.
mm,
Because duty is very complex because we all have different natures. But our natures start coming out when we practice these qualities. And that's why they said that one should not be impatient to know one's duties and qualities, but lead a righteous life or a Krishna conscious life in our terms, we say. And then we will start knowing ourselves better.
mm. And so I guess the implication there is if we know ourselves better by practicing virtuous qualities, then we will become more detached, sort of as a natural result,
We'll become more?
more detached.
Yes. And that is because we will become attached to a higher principle, like in our terms, maybe to association, maybe to chanting, and maybe to hearing, and maybe to serving. And when we become attached to higher principles, then naturally we'll become more detached from unwanted things.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, Roji. So, let's get into, I guess, the teachings, right? This is this is what it's been
Okay.
leading up to. So, I mean, the first thing Krishna says, in this is in verse 11, he sort of recognizes Arjuna's arguments from before, and he goes, or he says, while speaking learned words, you're not mourning for what is worthy. So, he acknowledges, look, the arguments you're making are sound, they're very learned, it makes sense. But at the same time, you're not mourning for something you really should be mourning for. And then the final sentence of that verse is those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. And, really he goes on to talk about the true identity of us as people, and, including Arjuna, including everybody on the battlefield. And that, the true identity of the person is not the body, it's not the mind, describes the body like clothes that you change, the same way that we change our clothes every day. In each life, the soul, the Atma, sort of changes bodies, sort of enters one body, lives a lifetime, exits the body, moves on. And so, this is really, I guess, this first half of chapter two, it's this description of the soul.
Hmm.
We get a lot of different adjectives, descriptors of it. The main thing sort of being that the soul is eternal,
Hmm.
unborn. The soul does not, or the soul is not born. It does not die. Sort of is all always is. Like the life force always is. You're really a part of. You are a living entity, so you're a part
Hmm.
of spirit, which is living, and
Hmm.
that is something that never goes away. That always is and has been, and that cannot be destroyed.
Mm.
And so one of the main points that he makes to Arjuna is that you, as well as all of the people on this battlefield, though the body may pass away in the battle, you yourselves will not die. You yourselves are incapable of being slain because you are the
Mm.
spirit, actually.
Mm.
So I'll stop there and I'll
Well,
hear your thoughts.
one very nice thing Krishna says, you are mourning over something which is not worthy of grief. Then he says, what is not worthy of grief is grief for those who are living or those who are dead. So, what is worthy of grief? Where should we mourn? See, Krishna does not say you should never mourn. He is telling you are mourning over something that is not worthy. So, where we should lament and feel bad and feel like pathetic, and where we shouldn't.
So if
Interesting, right?
it's, yeah, it is. So I mean, if it's not, well, if it's like, okay, it's not for the living or for the dead. Okay, well then who for?
Then for whom should we mourn? Like yesterday, just few days back, there was one devotee. It was very sad because one family member is sick. And now I'm thinking, oh, could I have spoken this verse to him? Prabhu, it's not worthy of your grief. Don't mourn, don't have any grief. So what is worthy of grief,
Hmm.
of mourning?
I'm gonna guess if that's what you're if you're going.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I suppose what's coming to mind is not knowing oneself, sort of being trapped in
Mm,
ignorance, or sort of
mm,
trapped in this cycle, trapped in all
mm,
the attachments.
mm,
Perhaps that's
mm,
something to mourn. Although,
mm,
if I mean, I guess that it would. Uh, I guess I would want to know what Krishna means by saying, the living and the dead. Is this referring to just the body, like the living body? I mean, if you're not supposed to mourn for the living, I suppose that would mean even, this like the soul itself, you're not supposed to mourn for the living entities because
mm.
in
Well,
truth, the living entity can't be harmed.
there is one person he had a breakup.
Hmm.
She left him, full of sadness and grief. That's constantly in his mind. So there is so much lamentation and mourning and grief. Krishna is saying, lament neither for the living nor for the dead. That's all we know grief about. It's for the living or for the dead. Krishna says, Arjuna is not worthy.
So how do we understand that then in terms of just the different situations that come up in life?
Yes.
Like if you do experience a breakup, and in particular things like family member does become sick, somebody passes away, things like that. I guess it's not saying that your natural response, which would be grief or sadness or lamentation, is like, the wrong thing to feel, right? It's I guess again, there's I do feel like it's important to point out the context, like it's
Hmm.
like who Arjuna is. I mean, we mentioned in a previous episode, it's like all of the pastimes of Krishna, including Bhagavad Gita, are like a play. Like, it's always described in this way where, it's sort of like something that kind of everybody who's involved is in on in this way. And so Arjuna is a very, very exalted devotee. He's a very, very
Hmm.
exalted um yogi. And so
Mm.
Arjuna is, so people say, so he's aware of all these things already, you know. Um if if a friend of mine was going through a breakup and I came and just said, you know what, the wise only don't lament for the living or for the dead,
It's not worthy of your grief.
it's
Give
not
it up.
worthy of agree. Yeah, he's like there. He's not. That's not going to help. I suppose it's in that particular
One point
situation.
there,
Yeah.
how hard it is on Arjuna, who is in a millions of times worse situation, to hear from a best friend Krishna, Arjuna, it's not worthy of grief. Wow. I mean, for somebody, a breakup is way more less intense than somebody standing in front of a family member and he has to shoot arrows at them.
Mm,
It's not worthy of your grief. Just shoot. Arjuna is like, wow. And you see, Krishna is straightforward. It is said that one of the quality of saint is straightforwardness. And actually, when we are straightforward, it helps others. But when we like there is no this thin line. We say, yeah, Prabhu, I understand. So there we are helping them understand, yes, we see your sorrow. And then but see from this perspective. And then it's not easy. See, to the extent we are self-realized now, we'll have that much confidence in the words we use. And when Krishna is speaking, he's like, shh,
mm. Like cuts to the point, right? Like it's just
to the
straight to
point.
the point. And you
We
mentioned
see
last time, or sorry, please go ahead.
there is one story of a father. His name was uh, King Chitraketu. Lost his son. His son passed away. Great saint Narad Muni came to him. Narada Muni. He is speaking straight to the father. This is not worthy of grief. This is a soul. This is a journey of the soul. He has moved on to the next body. To the extent the soul was allowed in this particular body, he remained there. The conception of my son is also a bodily conception. Based on the laws of arrangement, he came in this role and then he has to move on now. And there is again no conception of death also, or no conception of relationship. Everyone is part and parcel, and it's like a play, as you mentioned. And that for Maharaj Chitraketu was like, wow. And then he actually became a devotee. But the others who are telling him, we are very sorry for you, it's only going to increase his pain. And after the meeting is done, there is no real help to that person. Other than some solace which is temporary, there is no benefit to that person. But we see the benefit when Narad Muni spoke. We see the benefit when Krishna spoke to Arjun.
Mm. Yeah, you mentioned last time that when your spiritual master speaks to you, he doesn't need to say very many things. As you said, like
Uh,
one word can clear away, a million words of doubt that are flying around in your head, like the birds flying from the tree.
yeah.
And oh gosh, losing my train of thought. But I mean, it's a nice image anyway. But I was thinking, nothing in life is temporary. Or no, I'm sorry, everything in life is temporary, is what I'm saying. Nothing is permanent. And that's
Yeah.
that's like one of the just sort of the basic spiritual truths, that any tradition, I mean, is going to tell you. And it's a very hard fact to face, in life. But the fact that everything that sort of comes into our possession temporarily eventually leaves, whether it's money, objects, people, even the relationships that we have, very strong, and significant as they are, everything does eventually, leave. I mean, everybody passes away. And so it is simply the truth that everything you have, you will lose. And so the truth is we don't really ever own anything, right? It's, like you're saying, if even if you say like this is my family member, or this is my friend, or this is my pet, Krishna's message here to start is y- you're thinking about it wrong. You're thinking it
Mm,
in terms of like, I am this body.
mm,
That person is that body. And so that's mine. Like that belongs to this. That body belongs to this body. And I guess, I mean, if you really consider that, that's it's a very scary thing, because then death really is like a very scary thing. It's like, this is I am this body. If I go and the body goes, then what happens?
mm,
It makes it more, I guess, like a terrifying prospect. And many people feel that. I mean,
mm,
many people feel that. And so, like I guess, it's maybe the point I'm trying to get across is like you're saying, I mean, this is when you just cut straight to it like this, it sort of maybe like initially feels like it's like, how could you say this? Like there really is that reaction, which I mean, I think is, it's valid, right? But at the same time, this is the message that is going to cast the doubt away. It's going to make,
mm, mm,
those painful feelings actually go away, like it's
mm,
mentioned in the first verse of this chapter.
mm,
So,
mm.
um, yeah.
Like my mother used to say, she said, when I was young, I was very beautiful. She showed me some pictures. And then she said, see, this is life. That time, I don't know how many people may have lamented and how many people may have done so many things and so many desires. And then see what happened. And then you see after some time what happens. The only thing that is permanent is change.
Mm.
But that
Yeah.
time there's a lot of grief. And why? Actually, it's because of desire to enjoy. That's where the lamentation comes. I can't enjoy. I can't.
Like Arjuna was lamenting, I can't enjoy the kingdom. Right? I
Or
can't
the
enjoy the kingdom without
association
God.
of my loved ones.
Mm. Mm.
It's
Yeah,
still a
it's
pleasure at without keeping Krishna in the center at a physical level.
mm. I guess, it's like, I mean, I feel I still feel like this personal sort of thing. Like I go back and forth in my own brain, and I go like, well, wait a minute, like, again, like I said last time, like I'm at the, like, I still like I see Arjuna's point. I'm just like, wow, he seems like right. But it's like, if you really believe, that every, like, it's okay. You don't have to like be so worried about everything. You don't have to worry about death. Like you don't have to hold on to your good looks. You don't have to hold on to all your money. You don't have to like cling so tightly to those things.
Even if you cling, they are gonna go away today or tomorrow.
Yeah. That there actually just isn't a
So it's
reason
not
to do it.
worthy.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's it. I cannot own it.
Mm. It's a very difficult thing to accept, right?
Hmm.
And there's a difference between like believing it and accepting it, I suppose. You
That's where
can.
Arjuna is in,
Mm,
and that's why he's again and again coming back. No, 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 wait a minute. What about this? What about this?
mm,
That's where the weakness of heart is also coming. Arjuna is, we can relate more with Arjuna than with Krishna. But at the end of Bhagavad Gita, we will understand Krishna more than Arjuna's position.
mm. Yeah, it's like the words sink in, right? I mean, he speaks
Ah,
for 17
yes.
chapters,
Uh,
and he sort of just progresses through one topic after another, one point after another.
the
um
signs of the soul, the modes of material nature, how they are acting. Oh, now I get it. Till that time, cannot think beyond physicals. That's why
yeah.
Krishna says it's not worthy.
Mm. I guess my own, like, my own experience of reading Bhagavad Gita is, I guess it's sort of like exemplary of it's like, of what we're talking about. Like, at first you read like this chapter, and it's a little bit of like a shock. You're like, what? Like, he shouldn't be sad about his family. And I guess, you always, like, I feel like spiritual teachers especially, like, they tend to surprise me. Like, I feel like one of the characteristics of them is that you can't ever quite like nail down what they're gonna do, especially when you really get stuck, like, I know what he's gonna say or think, or and they have such a light touch in my own experience. Um, you're certainly an example of that as well, where there's so much compassion. I guess, maybe, I'm sort of getting at is that if I read the second chapter, sometimes like a part of my mind is like, this is totally devoid of like compassion, of empathy. And the experience of being around a spiritual community and spiritual teachers is rather the opposite. The fact that people are in pain,
Mm,
like, a spiritual teacher can see that a lot more clearly, first of all, and
mm,
has such a strong desire, a much stronger desire than I think, like an average person can recognize. They have that desire to get rid of that pain, to end, they want to end that suffering. They do
mm,
not want this
mm,
this person to suffer.
mm,
They see and they understand who this person really is,
mm,
to a significant degree. Like, they have this deeper understanding that this person is very attached.
mm,
This is a soul, like, this is pure
mm,
spirit
mm,
who's stuck in this position of, being attached to all of these things. And so if you see that very clearly, you want to end that suffering. And so,
mm,
it's like what goes along with wanting to end that suffering is instructing that person, to the truth, which
mm,
is ultimately meant to relieve them of all of those fears, of, all of those attachments, which lead to, a great amount of suffering. And it's just that it's kind of like at that onset, like
mm,
like like a lot of devotees say, it tastes like poison at first, this
mm,
spiritual experience,
mm,
this spiritual teaching. And sticking with it a little bit after a
mm,
little bit, it gets a
mm,
little bit sweeter, a little bit sweeter, a
mm,
little bit sweeter. You're
mm,
you're not going to like the taste at first, in
mm.
many
It's a
cases.
great point, Prabhu.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, in today's age, if we took the role of Arjuna and we are put in this situation of Arjuna, and Krishna says, "No, no, this is not worthy." We're like, ah, leave him. This, and we go somewhere else. But Arjuna had faith in Krishna, although he surrendered, he was not ready, but he kept on understanding more, understanding more, understanding more. He sticked with it, and gradually he got to understand and he got realized. So sometime we come in touch with these very pure teachings spoken by Lord Krishna. And we may have a tendency, no, 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 I don't agree with what Krishna says. We may have our own, we are coming from a physical perspective, a bodily perspective. And with that perspective, when we hear these true teachings, then we may have like you said, poison in the beginning. The first thought is rejection. No, no, I know what it is, and this is just, no. How can Krishna do like this? And Arjuna is right. And then with that intention, they turn away. That's it. But the quality of Arjuna was Arjuna, stick to it, stick to it, stick to it, clarified, clarified, clarified. He became self realized. Otherwise, if we believe in ourselves more than, say, Bhagavad Gita or scriptures or teachers, then we just tend to, because poison in the beginning, go away and
Mm. And
we
this
just.
is it's opposed, it's opposed to many many pleasures in the world that
Mm,
at first taste very, very sweet or very, very nice. And then it's an opposite process where it sort of degrades over time. And then eventually it sort of becomes poisonous in the form of an addiction, um, or, some kind of attachment. I guess an addiction would be a more extreme example, but that happens quite a lot in the world. The
yeah,
thing where like you first get it and you go, wow, this is great. And so, it sort of forms that attachment, that clinging starts to happen. I want this thing more. I want this thing more. The satisfaction that you derive from it then goes down over time. And it becomes a very unhealthy sort of attachment that is rather poisonous.
every attachment is addictive.
Mm. And so I suppose a piece of very good news is that spiritual practice is a positive attachment.
Mm,
I mean, that's from, I guess my own perspective, having, you know, I've learned from different traditions, or like read different books, heard from different people. There's something that sets the bhakti path apart that's very different, which is that there is like this whole positive end of the spiritual spectrum, where it's not just about getting rid of attachment and getting rid of suffering, that you can actually become attached to this spiritual practice. You can become
mm,
attached to the supreme, to the spirit.
mm,
You
mm,
are a part of that spirit.
mm,
And when you become attached, like it's like the same thing as becoming, I guess, self-realized, or saying that you
mm,
actually figure out who you are. You answer that question, who am I? And there's a positive attachment, where it's just sort of gets sweeter and sweeter as time goes on.
mm,
And I suppose that it's the reason why you like reading. I guess some people like
mm,
reading Bhagavad Gita more and more the more they read it.
mm,
Or it's like whether it's a chanting practice, meditation practice, reading different books like this, it's like the more you do it, the more you actually really like it, and you don't
mm,
see those negative effects,
mm.
in the same way that when you have an attachment to a substance, to an activity that's not particularly healthy, whatever it might be, it's like it just doesn't have that negative consequence that you see with other things in your life.
It's amazing. I wish the whole world could understand this, including ourselves. I wish
Yeah,
we can
definitely. I wish I
deeply
could understand it. Yeah.
we can deeply ingrain it. But talking about it further helps us to shed off some some skins which are coming up. Okay, shed it off, shed it off. Just by talking about it, because these are spiritual principles and they're uplifting. And you can see that in the word, how attachment is bringing so much sorrow from our own lives in the past and from the lives of others and from our own experience. You can see, wow, wow, wow. But the nature of mind is still want to get attached. And that's why we need to give him a alternative candy, which is spiritual practice. All right, here you go. As much attachment you want, develop here. But there is a natural tendency to go back to the previous attachments, and that's a cultivation we want to emphasize.
Yeah,
And that's a training.
mm, yeah, it takes
It's training.
consistent effort.
Mm.
Yeah. Like you have to keep kind of, I guess, reminding yourself. I know,
Uh,
like, I have to keep reminding myself sometimes that, you do, like, there's a reason there's a really
Mm,
strong reason you're doing this. There's a
mm,
really strong reason that like this really appeals, like
mm,
this really appeals. If I can
mm,
just have that little memory, I kind of go, oh yeah, that's right, and it's like you like these things about attachment. These, like
mm,
um at this point it's like I just kind of intellectually understand a
mm,
lot of it. There's like a small amount of experience that
mm,
sort of lends itself as evidence.
mm.
Um,
Spiritual
but it,
practice helps you see more.
mm, mm,
You become more observer. It is said that when we are attached, we cannot observe. When you come out of it, then oh, now I see.
mm, yeah. And I guess to that end, like Krishna is teaching Arjuna, you are the spirit. That's what the spirit really does, right? Like, I mean, the
Mm,
spirit is observing, it is
mm,
watching,
mm,
and maybe for another podcast, but it's sort of like, the idea that we are the one who's doing it, that we sort of are like this
mm,
big I, ego, like I am the one doing this, and I am in
mm,
control of all of this.
mm,
Um, is not the case. And so, it's like the soul itself, who we really are, is the indestructible. I guess
mm,
I'll bring that up again. Like Krishna he mentions that many times. You can't destroy it.
mm,
First of all, it's like, why shouldn't you worry about all of these people? Because like the reality is like you can't destroy what the soul is. It can't be
mm,
burned. It can't, you know, uh, can't get wet by water. It can't be withered by the wind. You can't cut it. You can't hurt it
mm,
ultimately.
mm.
Um, lost my train of thought again.
I think the science of soul is another very, very big topic. I think it's nice to have that
Yeah.
topic in another podcast. Just next podcast can be just science of the soul.
Yeah.
And this podcast like focus on what's worthy and what's not worthy of grief.
Yes. Getting a little ahead of myself, getting excited to keep
Just
going.
I mean I think yeah we are running out of time also, but I think um we can end with this perspective of what's worthy of grief. We discussed a lot about what's not worthy of grief. Huh? And that's inadequacy in our spiritual practices, not getting absorbed, not getting there, not able to realize. Like I was with one person and he's like approaching 50. And he says, when I was 30s, then I was thinking on how to spread these teachings of Bhagavad Gita, um, um, how to help, how to assist everybody. And now I'm reaching 50. Now I'm thinking of how to become absorbed and how to become deeply realize myself. There is a phase that comes like, I'm not there yet, I need to get there. Because as we practice for some time, the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, we realize where I have to be, what my state of consciousness have to be. And then we realize where we are. And then we feel like, oh, it's not so fast as I would like it to be. And one becomes more introspective, and there is some grief there. There is some lamentation there. But that lamentation is not for the living or dead or the physicals or the materials. It's more of my advancement, my perfection, and others' advancement, others' perfection. It's completely on a spiritual level. That's why Krishna is telling, but your mourning is not worthy. But there is something which is more worthy. You can get there. That Krishna addresses towards the end. Always remember me, become my devotee. Worship me, Arjuna. Just surrender all to me. And those things that Krishna says you should be doing, when we are not able to do that, that is worthy. And what he is lamenting now, it's not worthy because Krishna is not recommending that. Krishna is the Supreme Lord, Supreme Consciousness. He is coming to help us, to assist us, and He's telling us, see, the path of bhakti. And he gives us the goal also, mind always attached to me. So when we are not able to do what we are supposed to do, then that's worthy.
Hmm. So with that, we'll leave off next week.
All
Thank you
right.
all very much.
Thank you all very much. Thank you for watching. See you next week. Bye.